Hi everyone, Laura Roman here. So glad that you joined me today. The topic for today is forgiving yourself and why it's a must. You cannot go through life without forgiving yourself, because if you do, you're going to be very unhappy. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Laura Roman. I am a licensed psychotherapist and relationship expert in private practice. And what I do is I work with people to gain the confidence they need to lead happier, healthier, and more fulfilling lives and have happier and healthier, more fulfilling relationships. I'm here every week on Facebook Live in Sesh to help you to do the exact same thing, right? To gain that confidence that you need to have happier and healthier and more fulfilling relationships. So today's topic is one that I believe is mandatory. Like, I'm going to tell you, you don't have any excuse, and your life will never feel healthy or fulfilling unless you do this. And that is forgiving yourself. Now, I don't say that about a whole lot of things, right? Because I think that maybe it's negotiable or whatever. But self-forgiveness, I think, is just a key to having a happier life. Because what we do, okay, and like the last time, and if you haven't caught it, go look at my last video, which is, I think, last Friday. And what I talked about was when people have resentments and what happens when people hold on to resentments. And people hold on to resentments in life. They hold on to resentments in their relationships. They hold on to resentments from years ago. And they hold on to resentments from something that happened very recently. But the fact is that for many people, the reason why they're holding on to the resentment is because sometimes it's that they haven't forgiven themselves. Now, not always, and sometimes they're two totally separate topics or the ways that people are feeling. But what I'm going to say is that self-forgiveness is so important, because when we beat ourselves up and when you think about past things, like things that you have done in the past, things that you really regret, or things that you may have said, or things that you may have done, and what you do is you spend a great deal of your time thinking about those things, or maybe every once in a while thinking about those things, but beating yourself up about those things. What starts to happen is that when I beat myself up over things that occurred in the past, there's nothing I can do about it. Now, I'm going to say this because I think that too often when people are presenting information online, they make it sound like if you do this thing, like that's just absolutely going to work, like phew, like it's magic. But what I believe, especially with self-forgiveness and with many other things, is that it really comes in layers, that we don't necessarily forgive ourselves all at one time. That's almost impossible. So you may want to think about, and I know I often say this because I think it's just so important, because we don't give thought to how we're going to go about doing this. We either just hold on to it and think that this is just part of our DNA and we're never going to get rid of it, or we don't try to think about it at all because it's too painful. So what I'm going to suggest is that if there are things in your life that you haven't been able to forgive yourself for, my very first thing, and I always say this, I know I always say this because this is so good to do, and actually they've done studies on it to show that if you write things down, that it's very helpful. And I'll tell you why it's important to write things down. One is that it makes it real, because it's now gotten it out of your head, because it's all in your head, right? And you puts it down on paper. So now it's become real. Secondly, it also helps me to deal with things. So especially in terms of self-forgiveness, I can then begin to at least see this thing. And sometimes if I write about it, and I write more than just one word or one bullet point, but I actually write about this thing that I can't forgive myself for, you're going to look at it and think, like maybe it's not so bad. Like maybe I really can forgive myself for this, or maybe this is something that's really stupid, or maybe this is something I've blown up and made bigger in my head than it actually is when I look at it on paper. But the other thing that it does, and it may not do that, you may look at it and say, damn, I can't forgive myself for that. And there may be one thing, it may be two things, it could be several things that you cannot forgive yourself for. But the other thing it helps you to do is to look at it at least a little bit more objectively and not to have this tangle in your head. And I don't know about you, but I know for myself, when I look at things that I've had a hard time forgiving myself for, it becomes almost this tangle in my head. And so when I write it down, it clarifies it for me. But the other thing is that it helps you to revisit it, because what you have to do is that in order to forgive yourself and really get to the core of that self-forgiveness is really to do it in layers. It's not something you can do all at one time. There's no magic to it. But what you have to do is keep going back, looking at it, and maybe forgiving yourself a little bit at a time and allowing it to almost evaporate. And what I'm going to not evaporate, but what I'm going to tell you is that you want to also maybe do some visualization around whatever this is. So what I'm going to suggest is like take some time with it. You can't just like say, oh, I'm writing it down now, it's gone, because that won't work. So what you may want to do is that not only read it and maybe logically just think, this is really ridiculous. I don't know why I'm feeling so bad about it. The second thing is I can write it down and at least look at it and maybe dissect it a little bit. But the third thing I can do in writing it down is also do some visualization around that. And what I mean is that sometimes it's not necessarily what has happened, like logically, like a movie, but more the feeling I have around this. So when I visualize, sometimes that can help me to also forgive myself. So I may visualize the scenario, the place where I was. It may help me to visualize my feeling. It may help for me to visualize just a color or an object or a symbol. Like any of those things can also be very helpful in terms of my being able to forgive myself. And what I think of self-forgiveness as being is sometimes or always, not sometimes, it's like an onion, right? And I'm just pulling off the layers. And sometimes I have to keep going back and revisiting those places, right? And sometimes I have to visualize, and sometimes I have to write. And eventually, if you keep doing the work, because this is all work, again, there is no magic. And I don't care what anyone says. I have been a therapist for a long time, and I can tell you there is no magic around anything. There are things that can be helpful and can almost seem like magic, but there really is no magic. So it's going to take some work or some time or some effort in order to forgive yourself. But I'm going to also tell you is that it's so worth it, because just like, it regrets or, anything that I'm holding on to, bitterness that I'm holding on to, if I keep holding on to it, it's just going to weigh me down. And when I am beating myself up and being unwilling to forgive myself over something I've done or said or been or whatever, what it does is just continues to weigh me down. And then what happens is that I start feeling bad about myself, or I continue to feel bad about myself. But also what it does, it impedes my growth, that I can't get better. And that's why I stay stuck. I don't stay stuck because I'm stupid. I don't stay stuck because I'm the only one who can't. I don't even necessarily stay stuck because I'm sabotaging myself. Very often the reason I stay stuck is because I believe that I cannot move from whatever this is, that I can't be okay, that I can't forgive myself for this. Now, sometimes when you feel like you can't forgive yourself, sometimes you can do the work on your own. Sometimes you may need someone to help you to do this work. But I fully and completely believe that self-forgiveness is key to being happy, to feeling free, and to continuing to grow. So that is my in-sesh for today. If you like this in-sesh, please share it out with others. I would really appreciate that. Please sign up for my newsletter. I will promise you I'm sending one out next week. I am going to have more tips and tricks and great ideas for your self-growth. And please follow me. I would really, really love that. And as I said, I am here every week, sometimes twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, sharing with you just the exact same things I share with my clients in session. So until Friday, Have a great Wednesday, a great rest of your week. Please follow me. I will see you on Friday. Love you, and thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate that. Bye.